Hello and welcome to another update video about Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin is continuing to move up. After it yesterday just jumped from around 41.5k to around 42.7k. Yeah, we're pretty much exactly currently at the level where we are trying to break out of this green target area. And I mean, to be honest, it took a while to get there, but it finally actually only has done what I've been what I initially assumed, that as soon as we break above the 39.7k, yeah, remember that when we talked about this potential breakout into this green zone. Why is it green? Doesn't matter, it's just the color of that zone, doesn't matter. But to break into that zone, you can then very quickly move all the way up to 42.7. So all it did now is actually to reach that target. It did not do this in the end because it was starting to look like it was rolling over. When we did put that trend line on the chart, it was looking like it was starting to roll over. So it didn't do that head and shoulders that I thought would certainly be a possibility, where you then break again to the downside. So that is how it looked like when we were then finally in here, as the price seemed to struggle to actually reach that target. Now it has done it in the end. What is coming up here, from my point of view, it still looks fairly corrective to me. Yeah, it still does. It doesn't look very impulsive generally from a pattern chart wave point of view. Many overlaps in the chart, yeah, so it doesn't look too impulsive to me. Therefore, I continue to assume that we are here in a correction. Yeah, from my point of view, nothing has changed so far. The thing is only that obviously the higher we go, and especially if we break above this zone here, that then unlocks prices all the way up to 44.5k, yeah, and possibly even 45.5k. And that would then be more likely. Yeah, we're still looking at two scenarios here. As always, there is always a bullish and a bearish scenario, so that you're prepared for both and that you know what to do in each scenario. Obviously, you need to come to your own conclusions. I can't tell you if you should buy or not. I can only tell you what I'm doing. But we talked about this pattern here, the ABCDE, in which in a E wave, the price could come all the way up to, well, it needs to come up to that 44.7k, I would say at least, or 45k. That would be the resistance level of that white horizontal triangle, symmetrical triangle, from which you would have to, you would have to touch that in a wave E, and it can even go a little bit higher, all the way up to that wave C top, which would be around 45.5k. From here then, that would be the more bearish scenario. You would exit the triangle to the downside, so we would get rejected and move down. That could take us finally into my target area between 20 and 29k. Yeah, that is what I'm looking here primarily still. You know me, I'm still going to stick with my primary scenario until it's basically been invalidated. It will get invalidated, or at least it will get much less likely if we break above the 45.5k level, because then we are going to move up probably in a wave B, and it's all probabilities. Everybody who's telling you any different, I would say, is lying, because you can only move in this space with probabilities. Anybody who says he or she knows what's going to happen, it's not true. You can only move and understand this market with probabilities, and there's always, and there has always has to be, a bullish and a bearish scenario, okay? But I tell you very clearly my view here, and my primary scenario is that we are going to head down straight away, still to complete that correction. It's logical, it just has to be my primary scenario, because we are still officially in a downtrend. You have not broken above the 200-day moving average, for example. We are still in a trend continuation pattern actually, and the trend is down from here, yeah. And so the logical step for me would be to head further down. Also, if we compare it with fractals from the past, it doesn't do anything different, yeah. So and I showed you fractals before. I think I did delete them here from the charts. I would have to do it all again, but it basically showed a longer sideways move before we then drop at some point. All of that adding to my view that we first have to finish off the correction. Why do we have to get into that yellow target area? Well, that is typically, and again, probabilities, that is typically what Bitcoin does. It is an expanded flat where in this wave B here, you did overshoot the beginning of that wave A. Yeah, so you made a higher high, slightly higher high. This is called an expanded flat. Whoops, but only if we make a lower low in the end, and you need to make that lower low, basically to complete the correction, okay? And there is a scenario, yes, of course, there are always different scenarios where you don't need to make that lower low, but this is the most unlikely pattern, I would say, of all Elliott wave patterns, especially in such a wave degree. It's called a running flat. It is so unlikely. It doesn't happen very often. So, it is just unlikely. I need to mention it because it's a possibility, but it's just so unlikely. And that's all I can do here. I can present you the most likely, the most unlikely scenarios. Of course, I talk mainly about the most likely ones because there's no point discussing something which might, with a high probability, not happen. Okay, so primary scenario, sell off straight away, and we're getting closer to that because then we would need to get a rejection at around 44.5 to 45.5k. The alternative, of course, is that we could break out of the triangle to the upside. Then we would get up here into this region between 55 and 65k. Would be a huge head and shoulders. You could even call that. I might not even want to call that a head and shoulders anymore. Well, you could actually, because this would be huge. You have your left shoulder here, you have your head, and that would be a huge right shoulder. No, that wouldn't take us to zero, but it would take us then also down into that yellow target area down here. So that's what I'm looking at here, and that's all I can tell you. And we have to be a bit more patient to see what the price is doing now. Now, obviously, that we broke above that critical level of 42.7k, there is more further upside potential into the region of 44.5 to 45.5k. But bear in mind, we're now getting very close to resistance, yeah. And we are getting very close here to the decision point, and hopefully that should be the last wave here in the triangle, I hope, because also it doesn't have to be, but with the highest probability, this is typically what you get in a triangle, your A, B, C, D, E. Yes, they can be extended, but most likely this should be the last wave, and then hopefully we get here into any direction, finally out of this triangle. I think that will be quite important and interesting, whatever happens then. Looking at the EMA ribbon, we are above the EMA ribbon on the 4-hour chart, so that certainly gave the price here support. It stayed above that EMA ribbon. We talked about that long signal here, a short-term long signal that did hold. The 8-hour also printed that long signal. Interesting will be if we are already above the EMA ribbon on the daily. I'm pretty sure not. That is much higher. And oh dear, we are actually above the EMA ribbon on the daily, so that is also a good sign. And we can see here potentially them crossing, and if you see them crossing, you will get a long signal as well. So generally, looking at least short-term bullish here at the moment. You know me that I'm always a bit skeptical here because this is what we've done before here in that wave A, in that wave C, now we're in that wave E. We've always moved up, so it's nothing, there's no reason why to suddenly get more bullish than I would have been here in this wave C or the wave A. No reason for that. Primary is still my view that we're going to head down here, but we need to be aware of that potential breakout above 45.5k, and I have a strategy for that. I told you before, I will then open a long position and with taking profits in that green area. So anybody who likes the content, you can always check out the channel membership for even more content. If you like the video, check out the channel membership, hit the like button, leave a comment and subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.